about an axis. In this short video, I'm going to show you examples of these three types of symmetry, and also how to identify them in a two-dimensional motif. Later on, I'll describe the unit cell, help you identify one, and then classify it according to its plane lattice and its plane group. First, let's review the three types of symmetry. Here, we have the word mom, which has mirrored symmetry across the plane illustrated by the red line. Mirrored symmetry is marked within a motif with a solid line which the pattern is reflected across. Translation is when a motif is moved half a unit and then reflected across the mirrored plane. On the motif, translation is marked with a dotted line which identifies the mirror plane that the motif is reflected across. Rotational symmetry occurs when a motif is rotated around a point in a certain number of degrees. Twofold rotation occurs when a pattern is rotated 180 degrees, threefold 120 degrees, fourfold 90 degrees, and sixfold 60 degrees. Depicted in this picture is twofold rotation. Notice the plus sign has to travel 180 degrees before it is repeated. The center of symmetry is marked with a diamond to signify that it's twofold rotation, just as you would do on a motif. Shown here is the armored triskelion from the flag of the Isle of Man. It has threefold rotation, which would be marked with a triangle at its center of rotation. Fourfold and sixfold rotations, not depicted, are marked with a square and a hexagon respectively. It is important to find all of the symmetry within a motif so that you can help yourself find the unit cell, or the smallest repeating pattern within the motif. Within the unit cell, there lies symmetry as well. Using this, you can further classify the unit cell according to plane lattices. There are 5 types of plane lattices shown here in order: parallelogram, rectangular, rhombic, square, and hexagonal. The plane lattices are further classified into plane groups, which describe the internal symmetry of the lattice. Shown here are the names and the characteristics of the 17 plane groups. Don't get intimidated by the chart, as there are helpful pictures in our book which will help you identify the plane groups. And here are the pictures from our book of the 17 plane groups. So let's do a sample exercise. First, I'm going to show you the motif. Then I'm going to label where all the mirror planes are at, walk you through it, show you where the translational planes are at, and lastly go through the rotational planes, showing you twofolds, threefolds, fourfolds, sixfolds, assuming that they're all there. So here's our first motif, a series of circles. Readily apparent at the start is that there's quite a bit of symmetry going on here, so let's see if we can find it all. First, I marked all the mirrors as I discussed earlier using solid straight lines. It's important to mark as many of the mirrors as you can find. Don't worry if you can't find them all, as you can always come back later and mark more of them. Next, using the color purple and a dotted line, I marked where all the translational planes are. Notice how the circles move half a unit and then flip over the dotted line like a mirror. Moving on to rotational symmetry, I chose to mark my twofold rotations with a blue colored pencil and drawing a diamond at their point of symmetry. Some of you will notice that a few of the twofold rotations aren't marked on the motif yet. This is because I actually moved on to threefold rotation and forgot about some of the twofolds. When I found them later, I marked them in as I discussed earlier. In this image, we have the rest of the twofolds marked, as well as the threefolds with a green triangle. Finally, I marked all of the sixfold rotations in the motif. There's no fourfold rotations, but I marked the sixfolds with red hexagons. So that's all the symmetry of the motif. The next step is to assign a unit cell, or the smallest repeating part of the motif. Outlined in black is the unit cell of the motif. It's part of the hexagonal plane lattice and part of the P6MM plane group as discussed earlier. And that's really all there is to it. Remember, we went over the different types of symmetry, mirrored planes, translational planes, rotation about an axis. We went over what a unit cell is, what a plane lattice is, and plane groups. So go forth and find all the patterns in the world. Thank you for watching.